There's so much application for sales to help salespeople out with this. You can take your sales conversations and test them against this round table of your buyers. We asked them, what's the most important thing you'd want to see on our website about this that would make you want to buy this? It comes back with amazing feedback.
Hi there, I'm Ed Marsh, and I am happy to welcome you back for another episode of the Industrial Growth Institute podcast. Today, we're going to drill down into a number of practical applications of AI for marketing and sales. There's so much buzz about AI. There's such a profusion of companies and tools and strategies. And I believe that mid-sized industrial manufacturers need to engage in a couple different ways. Certainly at the board and executive management level, there needs to be a lot of thought about strategy and roadmap. And directors and leaders need to be consuming massive amounts of information and experimenting with various tools from a tactical perspective, like meeting recap and understanding, digesting decks, through strategic sorts of applications as well. Maybe even, for instance, creating a virtual director for idea sparring on important decisions in the boardroom. So this stuff is all critical for long-term business, but we also have to model the behavior for our teams. We have to set expectations. And at the execution level, there's different needs. There's opportunities, there's barriers, there's all kinds of things to talk about. And we're going to dig into a lot of that today. To guide us through this conversation, I'm pleased to be joined by Rick Kranz. I've known Rick for, it's probably 10 years, originally through the HubSpot community in the inbound marketing world. And I've particularly enjoyed conversations with him over the years because before he was a marketer, he was actually a business operator. So he brings that perspective. He's actually had 3 careers. He spent about 15 years in commuter rail construction and operation, then about the same time running a sign and display business, and then another 15 years in the inbound marketing agency space. Late last year, he pivoted again, and he set up the AI Marketing Automation Lab, where he has an interesting model building and coaching others on architecting and building AI automation solutions for sales and marketing teams. In a world where, simply it seems like slapping an AI label on something is a business model, Rick actually specializes in helping to bridge the gap between very sophisticated tools and practical business applications. Everyone listening and watching, do your part, like, share, comment, and please join me in welcoming Rick Kranz. Thanks for spending time with us today.
Hey, thanks, Ed. I'm happy to be here.
I'm looking forward to this conversation. You've taught me so much about this. I know you've got a lot to teach, and you've got a very giving heart. You're always willing to teach. But maybe we should start. Maybe you need to lay down a beat for our conversation.
Okay.
You're a drummer and I guess also a producer and publicist for your band Lunacy, a 9-piece rock and soul party band based in Wilmington, North Carolina. How long have you been a drummer?
Well, that's interesting. Yeah, I became a drummer when I was, I guess, 15. I started when I was 15 years old, and I was fortunate enough to study. I was
just
in New
a couple
York.
years ago.
Yeah, just a couple years ago. Yeah, but I stopped. I played for 5 years. I was very fortunate in that my mom was in the jazz scene, and she found a big band jazz drummer in New York who I trained with for, I think, 4 years every week.
Wow.
And so I played until I was 20, and then I stopped. We had a progressive rock band back then. We were offered a contract to tour, and I said, no, I don't want to tour. I wanted to get my degree and settle down with my fiance, and so that's what I did. And then about 5 or 6 years ago, I'll just tell you, sure. We were watching. We were in the movie theater watching Ragnarok, and all of a sudden, they're using the soundtrack, part of the soundtrack, the battle scene. They're using the Immigrant Song from Led Zeppelin, which was something my band played back then. And my wife turns to me, she says, "You should start playing the drums again." And I had the same thought. I should start trying to play the drums again. So it's been, I guess, a total of maybe 11 years playing.
So is it stress relief? Is it artistic expression? What's the hook for you?
It's artistic expression, and it's also the learning. I learned a lot. I would say I attribute a lot of what I've done in life from learning how to play the drums with that instructor. I studied with Howie Mann, and it was like just watching him play was jaw dropping as a little kid. And then him taking me from not even know how to hold a pair of sticks to be able to sight read big band charts and play them, was like all of a sudden you learn that, as a kid, you learn, wait, if I put, an hour a day into something, I can get really good at it over time. Like it doesn't happen instantaneously. So that was a really good learning experience. And I've taken that through with me through life and in different businesses I've created and in different areas I've gone down. Yeah.
But it's interesting. I don't recall ever hearing you use music analogies in any business conversation. You say you've learned from it? How do you see the overlap?
It's a way to learn. So it's more about not so much about the music. It's about methodology and I guess discipline
Okay.
for studying, right? So studying something you want to master, you don't have to, it's not about throwing yourself into it 8 hours a day. It's about, just picking that one thing that you want to master,
Mm-hmm.
and then working on that consistently, right? And then seeing that progress, and kind of getting excited about the progress. Yeah, I think the interesting thing about music is that as you start to see the project progress, you can start to other people start to see it too, because you can actually start performing, and
Right.
even if you're at beginning level, people will appreciate like, oh wow, he's actually can do that, and then you progress. And there's no way to actually master drumming. You with instruments, any instrument, anybody who's really good at an instrument will tell you, yeah, they'll never master it, but
Well, that's
they'll
true of
be.
any discipline, right?
I think so. Yeah, probably right. Yeah.
So I wonder if this pursuit of mastery is partially explains these 15-year cycles that you've had, where you work at something, you really develop a degree of mastery, and then you're ready to take on the next challenge.
Yeah, I kind of wonder about that myself too. Like, yeah, as if I was 15 years managing in a Fortune 500 company, and then I went and took over a company that had 12 employees in manufacturing and grew that,
Right.
and then left and started a digital marketing agency in 2010. And had that for 15 years, right? Yeah, there's something wrong with me.
So talk a little bit about the sign business. I mean, I think that background in industrial manufacturing will resonate with the listeners and give them some good context. Hearing from you as a fellow manufacturer talk about something completely different.
Yeah, that was probably the great experience that really gave me the foundation I needed to do marketing and help others grow. So we started, my partner and I started something in the movie theater industry, creating the concession displays, like the menu boards, and then we quickly expanded it into the quick serve restaurant industry. So I mean, to this day, if you go to a drive-through in Starbucks, that outdoor sign,
Mm-hmm.
most of them were designed and built and shipped by us.
Really?
A small manufacturing firm. We had 25 people in New York, and so we worked with a lot of metal fabricators. So we have that experience. We had a full in-house design team, a print shop, an assembly shop, shipping, and that was early. I started doing early inbound marketing. That was
Mm-hmm.
back before inbound. That was before inbound was a word, and
Right.
it was working so well. I had to build a 5-person sales team, and that's when I got involved heavily in CRM implementation,
Right.
and optimization. Yeah, so that was a learning curve. I had to go through Sandler training as a sales manager with my team.
And then a big transition. You exited that business. You moved from New York to North Carolina. You
Mhm.
jumped into marketing.
Yep.
Talk about that transition.
Yeah. I was in tech at the time. So in 2000, I still have the tech plaque on the wall here. It's like, I joined tech in 2000. I was recruited to join tech. I'm like, what is this? So I joined, and that was incredible. I was part of a group called 899, in New York. It was a very high performing group. And we held each other's feet to the fire. I think I was in that. I mean, that group transitioned. Check obviously changed to Vistage. We actually took the model outside of it into something called Compel. But that group, we held each other's feet to the fire through 3 companies. They held my feet. And that's where I really kind of learned how to coach CEOs, in a no nonsense way, be able to help them grow because we're helping each other grow. And,
Right.
that model, if you're not familiar with that model, you meet once a month and you're locked in a room for 48 hours, not 48, 4 to 8 hours.
Right.
And you have to bring issues. And if you bring an issue and you agree to what you're going to do next, you better do that, because you're going to be held accountable by the group.
I've heard you speak before about the powerful role that Vistage played in your business success. I didn't have the kind of the rest of the story, but
Yeah.
Certainly I think it, as I've heard you talk about in the past, it was a really important kind of formative experience.
Yeah, it was. It kind of got me out of my I guess it was in a bit of a shell.
Mm-hmm.
And it helped me get exposed to a lot of different businesses. Right.
Interesting.
Yeah.
We're obviously going to talk a lot more about your new lab. But I think an interesting thing that I'm seeing is a significant rise in recognition of the value of community and small groups.
Yes.
As we're all deluged with information and kind of this homogenized wisdom, and in essence, you've built this AI marketing lab, but what you're really building is a community.
Yes.
Is that the intention behind it, or is that just a byproduct of the way you found is best to convey the information?
No, the intention was to build a community. The intention was, so it's something my daughter and I created. And it comes out of, my daughter has 15 years experience in working in marketing agencies and working with clients.
Right.
Through various agencies, including the one that I started, plus some bigger ones, better ones than the one I started. And I have, 15 years of doing that, more than 15 years because I was doing it before that, but
Right.
then also doing a lot of sales enablement work. So for the last 6 years, I've been strictly focused on sales enablement work, working with sales teams. So as we're looking at the space and we're looking at what marketers and marketing agencies struggle with, and how things are evolving. And we felt that, okay, no one's moving fast enough when it comes to adopting AI, and learning how to use AI.
Right.
Everyone's talking about you can prompt this, ChatGPT 4.0 came out with image generation, and you can make this prompt and you can get these little cute images, which this is fun and nice. But, okay, so you need to systematize this stuff,
Mm-hmm.
People are talking about, there's a lot of hype, and even really trusted people are giving too much hype. They'll say, okay, you can replace your art department now with this chat GPT for, no, you can't. I use because I do all the marketing and stuff for my band. I have subscriptions to every AI image and video generation platform that exists.
Right.
And some of them are really good. What I would say, though, is it takes a lot of time to get the stuff out of it, and it saves you time, but it's always best in the hands of an artist. So no, you don't replace your art department. It's right now, the stuff is awesome, but it's at the equivalent of what I would say when Adobe Photoshop came on, right? The CEO or the sales manager of the company is not going to learn how to use Adobe Photoshop.
Right.
Give it to the art department.
Right.
Give this stuff to the art department. They'll generate a lot faster, quicker, better, but it's best in the hands of an artist.
Right.
So we see these things happening. Plus, we also see that there's ways to systematize with AI. So, we've all been heavily involved in workflow building, especially in the HubSpot sphere, and
Sure.
even Marketo and all that stuff. Like, you build these automations, workflows, but there's always been the issue with creating these algorithms that you get to a point where you can only have so many branches, if this then that, because some things are indeterminable. You just don't know what someone's going to write or submit and put in an email. But now you can put AI right there. So at that point where like you couldn't automate, now you throw AI into that, what I'll call an agentic workflow, and all of a sudden you can have a BDR department. So the great opportunity is for small bit. Again, this is like, to me, this is goes back to when the World Wide Web came about, right? Um, I used to do marketing. It would cost to do a marketing campaign before the World Wide Web for my small business. It cost about $20,000. You had to get a photographer, you had to get a graphic artist, you had to do print, you had to get a printer,
Right.
then you had to mail it out. I mean, mail it. There was no email. Mail it out, right? It was at least $20,000. When the World Wide Web was launched, that came down to just a few $100s at most. So here we are again. So small businesses back then could compete, and now they can again. So you have a small business and you can't afford, 3 BDRs. Well, yes, you can. You can build a BDR system if you know how to do it.
But the other
So,
piece with small business is that they can't afford to have somebody that spends all their time experimenting with AI, and it
yeah,
feels like that's part of where the community has developed with your lab. That what you have is essentially a group of peers that come together with your coaching and guidance, uh, brainstorming ways to use it, and then
yep.
figuring out how to actually bring those brainstorms to fruition.
Yeah, a good point. I'm glad you brought that up. It's the whole focus of the lab is there's all these red rubber balls bouncing down the street
Right.
every day. This stuff is accelerating faster than anything in the history of technology. And what we do in the lab, my partner and I, we do nothing but work with AI 50 hours a week. But what we're focused on in the lab is like what AI is going to work for marketers and salespeople, professionals today.
Mm-hmm.
Like, how do we utilize this today? What is practical? And so we come at it from that approach with the community. Like, here's what we designed. That's a practical tool, like the buyer's table, or we just built a system in with the community, teaching them how to build a system that automatically gathers all the images from all different various, but it could be their clients' images or any images they generate or images they had, and it automatically meta tags them and then puts them into two databases. One's vectorized and the other one is a CDN for serving. And so you can easily find images now, and the system will read your blog posts or your LinkedIn things that you can do, and it will recommend. It'll surface an image you may already
Wow.
have.
Wow.
So because that's a problem agencies have, like organizing and finding images,
Sure.
right? Yeah.
I had a conversation recently with John Barrows, who's a noted sales trainer, and he makes the point that he believes that most salespeople are irrelevant and they just don't realize it yet. I think the same is probably true of marketing agencies as these tools come along. I mean, you make the point you still need the artist, but a lot of a lot of what agencies have traditionally done is now less important. What trends are you seeing in the background that kind of lead you to think that this is going to be a valuable tool set?
Yeah. I don't want to make any predictions because it's really hard, but we had an inbound agency, Overgo Studios, since 2010. The year just before COVID hit, I guess was it 2019 or something.
Mm-hmm.
I saw that the inbound methodology, to a certain extent, the particular methodology for inbound was stagnating and was probably going to wither.
Right.
So we switched to sales enablement services, optimizing CRM systems around processes and helping sales teams create processes because that's immediate value, right? And the yeah, so what I would say is that we had this situation when search engines came about, and particularly then blogging came on.
Right.
I remember when blogs were launched, blog.org or something like that. You could blog on that, right? And that created a whole slew of digital marketing jobs. Now, before that, there was no digital marketing, but before that, marketing when you worked with marketing people and marketing agencies, is highly skilled people in the world of marketing, like designers, photographers, layout artists,
Mm-hmm.
copywriters, right? Very skilled. We created in the digital marketing realm when that came out, we created a lot of entry level jobs. So it was great. We created these jobs. So we have jobs for people that um, can write blog posts, uh,
Or even take a
post,
Word doc and get it put online and
yeah,
set the publishing
post
date.
post stuff, all
Right.
this stuff. So I think AI is really good at taking over these entry level things, but it's also making them obsolete in the sense that it was fun when search engines came out and we got the search engine now, and now I can type in something and it gives me a list of 20 different websites and I can go to them, right? And now I can look at that website and I can go through them and get information. The marketers were controlling that because yes, Google or the other engines had their algorithm, but the marketers were manipulating the algorithm to get their website searched
Right.
to the top. And then when you got to the website, they were manipulating the messaging,
Right.
right? And we all started getting tired of that, and Google realized it, and it started giving us snippets, right? Answers.
Mm-hmm.
And now AI is giving us what we really want.
So
It's
is
giving us
is is
answers.
this traditional playbook of SEO research and mediocre written content and forms on websites, is that content model dead?
Um, I don't know. I'm not an SEO expert. I used to be, but I got out of it because I thought it was too much dependent on Google.
Mm-hmm.
Um, I don't think forums are dead, and I don't think inbound is dead because I think people are still going to be coming in warm to try to get information and make an appointment and things like that, right? I do think the old model of the funnel, top of the funnel, middle of the funnel content, bottom of the funnel content, actually was never real. Um, it was a great construct, and it was really good for selling marketing automation to say, okay, we're going to nurture people with some automated emails through this. But through my experience of working with hundreds of companies and my own company is that the opportunities always came from people that came in the bottom of the funnel, um, meaning they were reading content that was buyer intent
Right.
content, like comparison sheets and how do I work with you and things like that versus educational stuff. So, and I think we've all kind of learned that at the same time, over the years that really wasn't doing it. It was driving traffic, but not content. So I think the tactics and methodology are going to have to change.
For
Like,
sure.
how do I get listed with AI? How do we get AI to recommend? So I think that's going to be the new thing because even Google is using AI
Right.
to give people answers. Uh,
But
so
even back when you started your agency in 2010, you you weren't just focusing on that traditional blog playbook. I mean, you very heavily emphasized video right from the
well,
beginning. How did you sense that that was going to be so important?
I missed that one. Yeah, I jumped in early. So there was, and this came out of okay, just quick story. This came out of a manufacturing firm. We were doing menu board systems for fast food, and I was one of the first ones to see a change coming with plasma screens. So, um, and and there was a company called Scala that was doing signage software through mostly doing it through malls and plasma screens. And I said, hey, wouldn't that be cool if we could create um, digital menu boards, right? I know I wasn't the only one that had the idea. I'm sure that a bunch of people had the same idea at the same time, but I jumped right into it. And the issue I had with, we built out systems, it was great. But the issue I had with selling them, my sales team is like they took forever to explain them. They
Mm-hmm.
couldn't explain it to the people buying it. It just took forever. It changed the sales cycle from 2 weeks to 3 months.
Wow.
And so what I did is I said, okay, I'm going to create videos. So I had to learn how to do videos, right? So I created videos to show what this stuff was. I gave it to the sales team and they loved it because it got them to a no, which you're going to get to a no right away. It got them to a no within a week. Right? So we got the sales cycle back down. And then when I left, my Vistage group said, you're really good at that. Why don't you start an agency and create videos for people that are trying to explain their services? So I did, and that was working. And I created this leasing model, right? And then one of my first client said to me, he said, "Hey, no one's watching my videos." And I said, "Yeah, I told you no one's going to watch your videos because you have no traffic coming to your website." And then he said, "Can you get me traffic?" I said, well, "Yeah, I'm really good at getting traffic. Why don't I do that?"
Got it.
So that's when I made the switch. And then I discovered HubSpot, because I got to a point where he got so successful, that first client, he kept telling other people
Right.
about it. And I realized that I just don't have the bandwidth. Again, there's no way to make this profitable, because I was duct taping everything together to make it work.
But what strikes me is I can see where the marketing, particularly in the industrial space, isn't necessarily intuitive, particularly as it's expanded into digital and all these other tools. The thing that surprises me is the amount of opportunity you found in simply building out CRMs. I mean, it feels to me like a company that thinks in terms of process of making stuff would think in terms of process and build their CRM out correctly. Where do you think is the biggest misunderstanding, or where do the problems develop in that space?
Yeah, it's one is low adoption, right? So I have experience with the most complicated CRM system on the planet, which is Microsoft Dynamics, back in 2007.
Hmm.
And we customized it to run our entire company, not just sales. It ran the phones, it ran the art department, it ran the production department, it ran the shipping, everything. Wow. We had plasma screens throughout every department. And this is a small company, 25 people, throughout every department, and it would update, and you could see in real time like what was going on with every order. Just because I was a nerd, and so was my CFO. She was a nerd too, so we would just come up with these, challenge each other. Hey, what can we program now with this, right? And I see that that is these CRMs, and they've come so far. And HubSpot's the easiest one to use. I love HubSpot's my favorite,
Right.
And it's so customizable now. You can make it sing and dance and help you manage everything throughout your company without even getting AI involved, right? And I see that's where the biggest problem is. I had 6 salespeople I had to get to adopt Microsoft Dynamics, and we just worked really hard at it, and we had 100% adoption. And we got to the point, like, if for some reason it was down, they were like, they didn't know what to do. They're like, "Oh, we got to have my Microsoft."
Wow.
So, yeah, working on it, getting it to a point where you can get 100% adoption with your sales team is the most important thing.
But in order for the sales team to adopt it, it has to be a worthwhile tool. It has to be set up in a way that helps them.
Yeah.
And it just seems like so many companies kind of take it out of the box and somehow assume that it's going to work.
Yeah, there's there's a sense that I bought this, right? So, especially with the bigger ones like Microsoft Dynamics or Salesforce, because bigger companies look at them. Well, that's what the other successful bigger companies have, right? So I'm going to get that, and then they get that, and then no one uses it.
Right.
I found really low adoption with Microsoft Dynamics these days, and Salesforce is easier to a certain extent, and then you get much higher adoption with HubSpot because it's very simple to use,
Sure.
but still they're using it at a basic level, not
Right.
really taking advantage of all its bells and whistles. So it's a matter of, you have to make the decision that you're going to invest in change management. You're going to invest, at least 6 months into a agency or a person who's an expert coming in and optimizing and working with your sales team. So that's what we did. We worked with salespeople to optimize it, and it's an iterative process, constant, change and improvement.
So we've talked about marketing, we've talked about sales. We used to think of them as kind of these siloed departments. Now it's much more of a continuum as the buyer oscillates back and forth between, we think of it as 2 functions. They think of it as their relationship with your company. And some of the statistics that, I mean, I've mentioned here before, but really I think explain this. Buying teams are, often 10 people. 70% of the vendors are on a short list before. 70% of the vendors on a short list were known to the buyers before they began a project. 70% of the time, the top company on the short list gets the order.
Mm-hmm.
Over 80% of the time, the first vendor or prospect contacts gets the order. 86% of the time, the spec the buyer created on their own never changes, even once they start talking to other vendors who think that they can influence it.
Mm-hmm.
So if you're not known, we used to call it branding. Now maybe it's trust or relationships. But if you're not known before a company has a project, you have a really small chance of winning a deal. And your team is not going to get to just kind of parachute in and change the requirement because you've got some feature that you think is important. How do you see sales teams and marketers adapting to this?
It's unless you're a major brand, unless your company that you're working for is a major brand, like IBM, Microsoft, HubSpot, um, Nike, you. So the majority of companies are not,
Right.
and the companies I work with are not major brands, and um, people are buying from people. So it's
They're
about the
not buying
person.
from AI sales agents?
Well, not yet, but they will be. If I made a prediction that'll happen. But yeah, so what I would encourage and get most of our clients to do is get their people on video in some way.
Mm-hmm.
Get them out there. Get them on LinkedIn, especially, right? If you're we work mostly B2B. Get them on LinkedIn. So get your salespeople on LinkedIn. So the best salespeople are marketers.
Right.
They're just natural marketers, right? They're comfortable with putting themselves out there. They're comfortable with expressing their ideas. They're comfortable with connecting with people, and they're comfortable with helping them and not being salesy. Those are
Right.
the best
Right.
salespeople in my experience, right? And so you're getting out there and been successful with that with several clients who had people that weren't reluctant to get on videos, so do videos, do something like this, get two of your salespeople on this having a conversation, right?
Sure.
And keep them short and keep them to the point and keep them on topic. And it's about, you got to get known, and all those stats that you spouted out sound spot on. I'm not familiar with them, but just from my experience, it's like, you're not going to get the order if you're not on that short list.
And maybe nobody gets an order. I mean, 40 or 60% of deals now end in no decision.
Hmm,
It's a
that
really
sounds,
challenging environment.
yeah. Is that, I mean, that's, is that from a trend, or is that because of the current economic situation, you think? Or
No, I don't think it's the current economic situation. The Jolt effect was published in probably 2022, maybe, and really highlighted that issue at that time. So it's not tariffs, it's not current uncertainty, it's changes in the way. There's a lot of risk aversion. There's a lot of overwhelm with information. There's a lot of these committee decisions with buying teams. All these things come into play.
right.
So if we shift really to focus on the AI, a lot of the conversations are focused on how we need to use AI to market and sell. But in order to use AI properly to market and sell, I think we need to understand how buyers are using AI in the process of doing their
Hmm.
jobs. What are you seeing in that area to kind of give us some context for the rest of it?
Well, I give myself as a use case, and I am probably more cutting edge or a little bit leading to bleeding edge, but eventually this is going to be the way everybody does it.
Right.
When Perplexity came out, maybe a year and a half ago, 2 years ago, I switched to that and I stopped using Google,
Mm-hmm.
period. Um, I'll only use Google now if I'm looking for a consumer item that I know I want to see a bunch of little sales images
Right.
for and click on and figure out where to buy it. But I use Perplexity for my research on everything, even from consumer products. I'll ask it, okay, can you give me a list of the best dishwashers and comparison charts, and it builds charts for me, right?
Mm-hmm.
I'll ask it about different AI tools or different SaaS platforms, and give me comparisons on the best use cases. And so you get some really detailed answers back. So you actually get the information you're looking for.
Right.
And I think that's how buyers are going to behave. Not everyone's familiar with Perplexity, but people are like, oh, you can do search now with ChatGPT. So they're doing that, and believe Google is actually has an AI system now too.
Mm-hmm.
I haven't been staying on top of that as much as I should. So I see that as how buyers are going to behave, and then it makes me think. One thing we built in the community was a tool that will actually evaluate where you stand with that, right? Your company. It's a tool that you put in your company, you put in your product and services, and you put in your ideal persona, and then the system uses several different AI platforms, and it anonymizes who you are, but it acts as if it's your persona
Mm-hmm.
searching for your product or service. And then it comes back and tells you who are the three most likely candidates. And then it'll go on and do a comparison. Another one that actually knows who you are will do a comparison between you and the likely candidates and what's different about them. And then it comes back with its citations. So like where the sources were that it used to find those three that
Right.
it says are the top three. And it's good for marketers because they can go back and see, oh, this is the sources that this AI is using to come with the recommendations, right? Um,
So a lot of content agencies are now saying, okay, fine, SEO may be of diminished value, so now we're going to focus on GEO, this idea of generative AI
mhm.
engine optimization.
Yeah.
It doesn't strike me that that solves the problem.
No, to me, I was never big on SEO. So I'm not going to be big on GEO either.
Right.
I always thought it's just, you're talking about content. To me, it's always been just create a product that people want, and that's is unique. I mean, if you're selling a Me Too product, well, good luck. If you then you got to rely on referrals and your connections and your community, and that's a great approach. If you're selling a Me Too product or service, I wouldn't go down the content route
Right.
and expect that to work, right? I would go to the community route.
Okay. So speaking of community, to the lab, who
Hmm.
who is the lab intended for?
It's tended for business owners, business operators, sales professionals, and marketing professionals. And they could be marketing professionals inside an agency. So we have agency owners in there. We have sales professionals in there, sales trainers. We have business operators, business owners, small business owners in there too. So it's intended for people that want to learn how to build AI systems, and that will help them in their business or in their, we have some that are trying to build systems for their personal use too. Like,
So you've got marketing in the name, but we've also talked about a lot of sales use cases.
yeah,
Um, should you be changing the name?
probably. Probably should just be the AI automation lab, right?
Right.
Yeah.
How does membership work?
The memberships, you mean, so it's a monthly membership. Yeah. There's no long-term commitment.
Okay.
It's currently, I think it's $345 a month. We have, which gives you access to everything we've already built, like templates.
And
But the
there's a
most,
huge number of those. I mean, there's a lot of stuff you can download, and then the team talks you through how to tweak it for your requirements.
yes, but what people say, and it's a small community, right? So, and we want to keep it small, because it's very hands on. So that's what they like the most. We have 3 classroom sessions a week, that you can attend or not attend. You can attend all of them, or attend one of them, or attend none of them, right? And each one runs from an hour to 2 hours, whatever amount of time we need. And what we do in those sessions is there's one session a week that's dedicated to what we call a co-build. We'll be building a really complex system, like we have our content management system,
Mm-hmm.
that we've been building out over several months. I take everyone through step by step. We build it out. We just finished building our image system, for them, and then the other 2 sessions are for troubleshooting. So you can bring whatever you're working on, your own ideas, and Kelly and I help people troubleshoot that and make sure it works. So, and that's what people actually get the most value out. And we talk
Sure.
about, like, we have conversations like this. They'll ask, like, hey, what should I do marketing wise? So, we do leverage our marketing experience and sales experience and help them understand what not to do.
Yeah, I know one of the frustrating experiences that I've had is I have an interesting idea. Somebody talks about an interesting tool. I go in, I spend a little bit of time trying to learn my way around it. I start to try to build it. And then there's some little switch somewhere, or there's some connector to another platform that's necessary to then make it live, or some small thing just interrupts my ability to actually get it done, and then I get pissed off and frustrated, and then I've wasted enough time at that point, and so then I forget about it. And I've gotten a lot of things close and
Uh-huh.
very few things actually finished. And that's one of the things that I particularly appreciate about the lab is the expertise and the willingness to look at something that I've worked on, offer tips on how to improve it, but also just help me actually finish it.
Yeah, yeah. I think that I've heard that echoed from other members too. I'm pretty much a troubleshooter. Like, I don't accept roadblocks. So somebody comes in and says, I can't get this to work. Well, then I figure out, okay, what is that one connection,
Right.
that one field that's messed up? Or a lot of the times, it's just, okay, we're going to step back and we're going to take a different path, right? So let's go back to the fork in the road, because when you design systems, there's always a fork in the road where you can go this way, that way,
Right.
a multitude of different ways. So we roll it back and we go another way. But we always get it working at the end of the day.
And so with this library of templates, people can download it, but you've also got great videos that talk you through kind of how to adjust it, how to tweak it, how to make it your own, how to customize it for what you're trying to do.
Yes, yeah, yeah. So there's a library of videos for each build that we do. Library of videos, and we try to focus on stuff that's practical
Right.
that you can do today, use today, right?
And I think another thing that's cool from my perspective is the community aspect of the brainstorming of the apps and the solutions. So you can collectively figure out the best way to do it, and then there's the hands-on support. Again, the when I've tried doing something with Replit, for instance, and
Mhm.
bought a subscription, set up GitHub, did all these pieces, and I couldn't get it quite done. And so, um, to this point, with small businesses where you've got a marketing person or a sales ops person, they're trying to figure out how to incorporate this stuff. It's all for naught if you can't actually, in the end, figure out those pieces to actually make it work. So it's bridging the practical and the theoretical.
Yeah, I think so. I think it's really. I mean, it would be great for the intent was for marketing agencies to be able to send one of their staff to learn, how to use AI in a bigger way.
Right.
Learn how to systematize it so that you're working with it. It works with your agency. It works with the people in your agency. Like our content management system. It's not something that just spews out AI slop.
Right.
It actually manages content for you, and at different steps, it can get approvals from different teammates. So it's a system. And then someone in the school talking about brainstorming and collaborating. Someone said, what about images? Like, how do we manage our images? Like, oh, that's a great idea. Let's do that. So then we built that, right? So that's something we added on to it. So it's I think it's a good way for agencies to learn how to adopt AI in a very uh, systematic way and use it throughout their agency with their people.
But the
It's
way you've set it up, somebody who's an in-house marketer can come and do the same for their own business. They're no longer dependent on an agency to figure it out.
Yeah. So we have in-house marketers in there too. Yes. Yeah.
So a lot of it started around the idea of content creation. As we think about AI content, what's this big hang up about the M dash?
I didn't even know M dash. I didn't, I had to look it up the other day. Because I saw people talking about M dash, and I'm like, well, and then I look, what is M dash? And so it showed me that it's a dash that's the width of an M. And I'm like, oh, wow, I really wish I knew how to do that because that's how I write. I've always written I don't do a lot of writing because I'm not good at it, but when I was writing my own stuff, I always used those dashes. And I didn't know you can make a wider one.
Right.
I don't know how you, but it's called an M dash, right? So I think one of the AIs is pretty good at doing M dashes. Now I use AI to help me with my writing, right? And I give it ideas, and then I have it generate some writing, and then I'll edit and then regenerate stuff. But I've trained it on my style,
Mm-hmm.
so we have a tone of voice system that we built, and basically you give it all your content, and it'll spew out a 3,000 word document that will train AI on how to write like Ed Marsh or Rick Kranz. And so when you're writing like Rick Kranz, you're using M dashes,
Right.
right?
What's the potential cost to credibility if prospects realize that a lot of what we're publishing is synthetic and generated by AI as opposed to something we sat down and wrote?
Who cares? Yeah, it's So, do you care that a photo was edited with Photoshop?
No.
Yeah, you don't even know, and you're not going to know. So it was. I think one of the AI platforms is using a lot of M dashes now. The best I forget which one it was, and I don't want to be wrong, and say it. But now the best writing is Claude Opus. Claude Opus writes like a human. It doesn't have, it doesn't spew out the stuff like the woven tapestry of the GPT would put out like, oh, it's like, what, who writes like that? And so Opus writes like a human.
So, how often you're reading content do you find yourself wondering whether it's original or synthetic, or do you not even spend time worrying about it?
I don't care.
No.
I'll know right away if it's starts out with the woven tapestry of something, right? You can tell, yeah, if it starts spinning that stuff, I know right away. But I'm really looking for the point in things, and I'm more of a video consumer. So I would say, a good 2 to 3 hours a day consuming YouTube videos.
Really?
Yeah, well, I got to stay on top of what's coming out, and the only way to do it is through YouTube. I mean, you can read articles, but like that doesn't really show you. This is a show and tell business,
Right.
AI. You got to see what it's doing, and you're not going to read about it. And books aren't helpful because by the time a book gets published, it's like, oh, this technology is moving so fast, it's insane. I spend 50 hours a week with it, and I cannot keep up on it.
And what about all the hubbub around comments on LinkedIn being AI generated?
Yeah, that I think that's stupid. Like if you're gonna engage on LinkedIn, like you got to ask, like, what's your point of leaving a comment? People don't have a really good strategy or tactical thinking when it comes to LinkedIn,
Right.
right?
Pete Caputa seems to do it very well.
He's the best. Like Pete's a perfect example of um, a sales guy who's a marketer
Mm-hmm.
first, right? He really knows how to market, and as a result, he was really able to grow sales at HubSpot when he was there and at DataBox, and yeah, he's the guy to watch, especially when it comes to how to use LinkedIn.
Right.
I you know I think people just like to leave comments. I don't to say they did or they heard, but like most of the comments people are leaving on posts, like no one's actually looking at those comments. You have people that have huge followings, and people will comment on them. Like, I'm like, what's the point?
Right.
No one's going to see that comment. That person has 1 million followers, and it's like you look at Dharmesh's post, right? And within 3 minutes, there'll be 1,000 comments. Like, you expect Dharmesh to look at these comments?
Right.
He doesn't. Who has time when you have that many followers? So
Sure.
I think the strategy is just bad to use AI to leave comments. Yeah. You want to use AI to help you write a good post. To me, it's more about giving you got to give value. Like, give some value on LinkedIn. That's why I don't post that often, because it takes me a while to put something together. In my newsletters, I try to teach something. In my posts and videos, we try to teach something that people can take and use. Um, Probably not doing it right. We're not doing it consistent enough to build enough following, but not really looking for a huge following.
Sure. So speaking of that, you want to keep the community small, and you've really designed the community for the folks that have to actually execute. I would argue, though, that executives and directors and others, kind of more senior folks, should join to observe. I mean, I think if they don't understand what's possible and at least have a sense of the bones of how something gets built or framed out,
Mm-hmm.
then all it is for them is a black box, and they're completely at the mercy of people who may be ignorant themselves and just know slightly more to guide them in how they integrate into business functions. Do you have any what I would call senior executives who kind of lurk in the background just to learn by osmosis?
We have two agency owners, so of decent sized agencies,
Hmm.
um, and but they're active.
Right.
So it's and I think that's a good point you make, because you even if you're just lurking in the background, you can get an understanding of, oh, this is what could be done,
Right.
because then it starts triggering ideas.
Exactly.
Like, oh,
Right.
well, if you can do that, could you do this?
Right. Oh,
Um,
I wonder if we could do that with our RMAs. A completely different part of business. Just once you start to see how the pieces fit together.
yeah, yeah. It's expand. Tell me a little more about that. What do you?
Well, I just use that as an example, but my point is if an executive comes and sees how it can be used to facilitate the entire management of the content creation process,
Hmm.
then that would perhaps trigger ideas about how, holy cow, I hadn't understood that it was capable of this. I'm thinking about this other issue we've been wrestling with in a completely different department, something in shipping or something in
Yeah.
processing RMAs or whatever the case may be,
Right. Right.
processing expense reports or something
Hmm.
like that.
Yeah.
I wonder if we could build a system that would help us there.
Yes. Yeah. It would be helpful. There's too much hype around um, agents, AI agents, and people debating, what is an AI agent? Independent. They make decisions on their own, and people are thinking, so there's so much information out there, and it's not all misinformation, but it's misguided. Because what you really want to build when you build a system is something that has guardrails on it, right?
Hmm.
You don't need an agent that's going to make all the decisions for you. I mean, maybe that'll come someday. Maybe it won't. Um, but right now, there is enough ability to build these agentic workflows that have guardrails, so that it can't make a mistake, and it will work 100% of the time. You're telling it exactly what it's allowed to do, what it's not allowed to do, and
Right.
it passes it on to the next player. And you can always have a human in that loop anywhere. And these are the systems that we build currently, and that would be very beneficial for senior executives to come in and see, like, oh shit, I could do this with
Right.
it.
And they don't have to understand how make.com connects to whatever the other tool is and
Yeah.
what boxes get checked and all that, but just to conceptualize how it works, then they can again figure out other applications for it. I saw some interesting data this week that essentially it was a report that ran a debate exercise between LLMs. In some cases, different LLMs, in some
Hmm.
cases, the same one, same model. And it basically fed incremental information. It was almost like kind of like a tabletop or a progressive sort of a debate thing. And what was fascinating is that even when the agents knew that it was going up against, or when the LLM knew it was going up against precisely the same LLM on the other side, each one thought it had a 65% chance of winning. So there's almost like Dunning-Kruger in the LLMs where they don't know what they don't know. They think they're better than they are. And so building in those guardrails feels like it's really important.
Yeah. There. So LLMs, the more you work with them, you realize that they're very good at processing information really fast and predicting things. But depending on what you mean by when you say smart um, and clever, they're not that clever.
Right.
Uh, they don't have much creativity. They're really good at synthesizing and using and looking at what has been done before by humans and then recommending it to you. But you need to be creative about it. You need to have the creative idea.
Right.
Like you came to me and you looked at one thing we did and you said, "Hey, what could we add this and could we add that?" I'm like, yeah, that's a great idea. Yeah. LLM wouldn't have come up with that.
Sure.
Yeah. It's so it's a great tool to incorporate inside of a workflow and creating a system. And that's what, a lot of, it's the same place where a lot of companies fall down with their CRMs.
Sure.
Is they're not systematized.
Right.
So, it comes back to that. Think about it systematically. Like, what are you doing, manually? Just lay it out. What are you doing manually? And is it even worth automating?
Right.
Some things aren't, but
It seems like in the industrial space, there's a lot of companies where one executive or a couple employees might be fairly enthusiastic adopters.
mhm,
They may use the built-in Google or Microsoft tools. They might use ChatGPT to do some
mhm.
ideation. Maybe they use some tools to manage their email, but there isn't a cohesive corporate strategy on how we're going to incorporate KPI, incorporate um, the LLMs into what we're doing. Have you seen any companies that hold managers accountable to KPIs of use cases and the impact in terms of hours saved or business impact?
I have not, but I think there are some studies out there um, that have done that. We're focused on practical stuff and implementing it right away.
Mm-hmm.
Um, so kind of stay out of the management and theoretical. To me, it's like, okay, you don't want to do this, fine. Um,
Right.
your competitor's going to, and then you're going to, or you're going to go out of business.
Right.
Um, it's but we're really focused on just, okay, here's what you could do. Here's how you could implement it.
Makes sense.
Um, yeah, I think with the larger companies, and we don't work with the really large companies, so I have no expertise there
Mm-hmm.
since I left my Fortune 500 company. But I am sure that they have to think in different ways about how are they going to implement this and bring it structurally across their organization. Whereas the small businesses and even some of the mid-sized businesses, they're like, okay, we're just going to do this. Like, okay, here we just implemented the system
Or
today.
leave it up to individuals to decide how they're going to use it, which feels like both a risky proposition and a squandered opportunity.
Yeah, it's more of a squandered opportunity. Unless then it becomes risky if the individuals start connecting it to their systems without some guidance
Right.
or expertise. Even now, people are questioning whether you know the capabilities now with Claude and ChatGPT, where you can open it up and connect it to your HubSpot, connect it to your email. Is that risky or is it not risky?
Sure.
Um, so I haven't done that, and I don't plan on doing it.
Right.
We do it through an agentic workflow. So we have guardrails. So yeah, I have my emails connected. I have AI reviewing our emails that come in and categorizing them for us, so we know what we have to look at and,
Mm-hmm.
and don't have to look at. But it's anonymous. It's not connected directly to my email. AI doesn't know whose email it's looking at.
Right.
Um, so it's not having it connected to everything. Yeah, it could be cool. It may be the thing to do, but you don't have to.
It's not a
So it
step
could
I'm
be risky.
prepared to take at this point.
Yeah. I don't know.
Obviously, people should check out the lab. You also have a LinkedIn newsletter that they can subscribe to. What other blogs or podcasts or YouTube channels? I mean, if you're watching 5 hours of video a day, you must have some other resources you can recommend.
Yeah. Well, our website is the AI Marketing Automation Lab,
Mm-hmm.
and we publish some We publish videos on there. We publish tools. So we have blog posts on there, but it's basically blog posts of our email letters. But we focus on creating like bigger tools, and launching them on that site for people to use. Like the thing where I mentioned the voice system, where well, it's not a voice system, but it replicates who you are in your writing. That's available. Looking at whether AI would recommend you or your competitor, that's a tool on our system. We have tools like we'll tell you which LLMs you use for what on our system, like that. As far as other things, yeah, YouTube, I would say YouTube is the first source. It really depends on what you're interested in. If you're interested in knowing everything new that's coming out, there's a couple of newsletters out there that I don't subscribe to for that. But you can just go to YouTube. Once you start watching stuff on AI and YouTube, you're going to get served.
Sure, of course.
Also AI on YouTube.
Right.
But it's really, a lot of people are, are they focused in on image generation, video generation, LLM automation, that type of stuff. But I would definitely, I don't have one specific source other than, if you just want stuff that's practical and usable today, then it's the AI Marketing Automation Lab.
Makes sense. And I'll put that link in the show notes for sure.
Yeah.
What's the roadmap for the lab? Do you just see incremental keeping up to date on tools and trying new applications, or do you see some kind of a big shift or expansion coming in the near future?
Right now, it's about getting the word out and getting more people in, and we're going to obviously shift and move with how AI evolves. Right now we're using, you mentioned Make, which is an automation system like Zapier or N8N, which are good systems for being able to set up guardrails and also implement AI into your automations. These systems have been around before AI, and been very reliable. So, we're continuing working with that and building out things that will help marketing and sales. As far as the roadmap goes, I don't know what's ahead, actually, Ed. The short answer is I don't have a roadmap for that. Yeah.
And how about at a meta level? Where do you predict we'll be at with AI in 2 years?
Oh, your prediction, huh? I don't know. It could be a bit scary, right? I hope we're not at the point where it's replaced a lot of the workforce. So I have hope that it becomes more of a tool for people to use and become more efficient and be able to get more done, versus people losing their jobs.
Well, that goes to one of the really interesting philosophical questions that I've seen. People seem to come down in two camps: that either it's going to narrow the gap by improving the performance of mediocre performers, or it's going to accelerate top performers. Do you have a sense of that?
And we're talking about people.
Correct.
Not companies, right?
Correct, yeah.
Yeah. There's several ways to look at it. Like the way we approach it from a systematic standpoint, it's going to be very small percentage of people from that standpoint. You're going to have the mind for data management, right? The way we're using it. So the people that are natural programmers will do very well. People that understand how to solve puzzles, and they like doing that, and doing writing SOPs. If they adopt this, they'll be very successful. But then outside of that's just my little realm, right? Outside of that, I think artists could be really successful, like graphic artists that are selling their services to marketing agencies, or selling their services to companies or inside marketing agencies. They will do very well if they adopt some of these tools. I mean, if they're using Photoshop, then there's no reason why they can't learn how to use some of these more advanced tools,
Right.
um, like open art and things like that, that can do crazy image generation stuff. So I think they'll do well. Um,
My prediction is going to help top performers differentiate themselves even further. I mean, I think that initially, people who didn't take the time to carefully read emails or to write appropriate replies benefited from it. Suddenly, they look more engaged and more attentive and
mhm.
more competent than I was accustomed to seeing them. But I think that was a brief sort of a surge, if you will. And I think that now, as the tools are evolving, the real opportunity is for folks that are going to be very thoughtful and cerebral and aggressive and creative in how they incorporate it into their work. And I think that's going to further differentiate the top performers.
Yeah.
We'll see. That's my call.
Yeah, I think you're right. Yeah, I think I was watching an interesting uh, podcast on somebody who thinks very intellectually about this in deep, and he was saying that, and I forget his name. I apologize. I should have had that, but he was talking about how we're using AI wrong. Like we use, like a lot of people use it to summarize stuff,
Mm-hmm.
and he said really the best use for AI is to dig into things for us, because we don't learn from summaries. We learn when we have to dig in to details.
Yeah, tell
And
me what's wrong about it. Tell me what I'm missing. Tell me 12 things that I should have thought about that I haven't thought
mhm,
about yet. That kind of
yeah,
challenging your thinking and your understanding, certainly there's a lot of power in that.
yeah, yeah. And most people aren't doing that,
Right.
right?
Well, most people don't want to do that. They haven't done that with their human colleagues. I mean, they haven't wanted to, don't bother me with these other things. This is what I want to think about, and that's it. So it makes sense they're not going to turn to technology to do what they don't naturally want to do anyway.
Yeah. So I think people that are naturally inquisitive are going to really do well.
Right. Yeah, that makes sense.
Yeah.
All right, Rick, how do people get in touch with you?
All right. It's Rick at AI-marketinglabs.com is email address.
Okay.
You can find me on LinkedIn at Rick Kranz, at Rick Kranz
I'll
on
put a link
LinkedIn.
to your LinkedIn profile in the show notes too.
Okay. And you could, yeah, those two ways to find me. And our website is is ai-marketinglabs.com.
Okay.
It's not an M dash.
All right. Wrap us up. Give us 3 minutes on how small and mid-sized companies need to begin to incorporate AI into their marketing and sales, how they begin, how they build the muscle, and what you anticipate the payoff will be.
Yeah. Okay. Um, I think the way you need to begin is to look at your processes. Like look at what work people are doing that's not creative, that doesn't need the creative mind. There's a lot of busy work inside of agencies, right? There's a lot of um, writing boring blog posts that don't necessarily require, you know, somebody that is capable of writing an interesting novel,
Sure.
right? Um, look at these processes. You have to organize images for your client. If you're a marketing agency, you got to organize your images. You got to organize their writing. How are
But
you
but
doing
everything
that?
you're saying
What's the
about
approval
agencies
process?
applies to, I mean, in
If you're
small
marketing,
businesses too.
like say you're running a marketing department, right?
Right.
And this applies to small businesses, right? Look at all these processes. Look at, oh, you're a small business. Look at, can you afford to have a content creation department, right? If that's something you want to pursue, if you have you feel like your service and your product are unique enough that it makes sense for you to print content, this is something you should be looking at. Your sales, look at your sales. I mean, sales is so prime for this. Look at how much work your salespeople are doing, following up on emails or writing proposals. Most of that grunt work can be automated with AI. Look at your website. Like, do you have a chat? But I hate saying chat bots, but because their chatbots are so old school, where you have this if then, mentality, right? But you can have an AI sales assistant on your website that will be able to get answers to people quicker
Sure.
than anyone on the planet can, and will know more because you could train them just on your all of your services and products and your pricing and whatever you want to make public. You can even have voice bots, right? Call in, for companies that got a lot of inbound phone calls, calling agents,
Mm-hmm.
not ones that do outbound, but inbound agents calling. What am I missing? Just strategy. So here's the thing. This we created this thing called the buyer's table, right? And basically, it's a round table of your ideal personas,
Right.
and very detailed out. That each one has their own LLM. They have their own prompts, and you can ask them any question.
So
So
you
if
can
you're
test
thinking,
messaging against it. You can say, okay, your a slightly different version of it could be built for the buying team. If there's 10 people on the buying team and you've got one deal champion and you're having a hard time figuring out what moves the needle for 3 of the other people on the buying team, build that buying team out as your buyer table and war game your sales process and how you reach these other buyers. You built a great tool at one point for salespeople to help them do pre-call research, which so many of them skip. In the industrial
mhm,
space, they often don't even look at the LinkedIn profile. But if they've got a great tool where essentially they know their meetings for tomorrow and they plug in the URL or whatever information is required, and they have a 3-page report that talks about strategic initiatives, recent executive changes,
mhm.
the key things important to the company, the history of the person they're meeting with, and all of that is in an easy to digest format to prepare them for a sales call is huge. So you've built a number of these tools that can, very directly and immediately enhance the effectiveness of the sales team too.
Yeah, yeah, yeah. There's so much application for sales to help salespeople out with this. And yeah, testing. You can take your sales conversations and test them against this round table
Right.
of your buyers. We did a demo where we pretended we were about to launch a laser cutting device for aimed at fabricators, and so we asked them, like, what's the most important thing you'd want to see on our website about this that would make you want to buy this,
Right.
and we gave them that hypothetical, and they it comes back with amazing information, amazing feedback and data, like from each person, from the owner,
Right.
from the lead welder, from the engineer, like what they want to see, what they need to see
So
for
instead of
them.
just marketing, vomiting up more crap about our features, rather put the information in the context that buyers can easily access it.
Yeah, yeah. So I mean, these are just some of the few examples of what small businesses could be doing, um, and stuff like that cost, like, I don't know, to ask that question and get that answer cost like 4 cents.
Yeah, except for companies that don't know how to build it, they got to go and pay somebody 10 or 20 grand to build that for them. And that's the beauty. That's the value proposition of the lab, to not only get the ideas, holy cow, we hadn't thought of using it for pre-call research. Great. So that's a huge value conceiving of that use case. But then
Yeah,
coming in, having the template, having somebody to look over your shoulder and guide you to adapt it to your specific requirements and start running it that afternoon, not paying 20 grand and waiting a month for somebody to custom build it, but just, being able to implement these things quickly. It's
yeah,
hugely valuable.
yeah. It is, and we also do, for people that don't have the bandwidth, we do build it for them.
Then, of course, I believe the problem is they don't understand. Again, they haven't seen the framework. They don't have a sense of what's possible. They can't then take that and iterate and conceptualize how to use it in other parts of their business.
Yes, because all that could be expanded.
Right.
It could be tied into the vectorized system that we have for storing your information, and yeah.
I mean, just think, for instance, if a company adopts that tool for pre-call research on behalf of the salespeople, a next logical place is to take that, hey, let's give that to your purchasing department or to your engineering department that's getting ready to meet with vendors, have it do pre-call meeting research on the vendors to prepare for that
Hmm.
and think about the kinds of questions to ask and that kind of stuff. I mean, it just,
Yeah, yeah,
once you start to see it, you can't unsee it, and you start to see all these other places to use it. And I think that's the huge value of that you're
yeah,
creating with the lab.
yeah. That's a great connection, Ed.
Cool. Great conversation, Rick. Thank you so much. We
Thank,
wandered a
thank
lot,
you, Ed.
but I think in aggregate, this
Yeah.
is really powerful.
Yeah, I did wander around a lot. Sorry about that.
No, it's my job to keep us going a place that I think is going to be interesting. So hopefully everyone that's listening and watching finds it interesting. Please pay it forward with a quick like or share or comment, and I'll make sure that if there's comments or questions that Rick or I jump in and answer them. And by all means, everyone, please subscribe, and I hope you'll join me again next week for the next episode of the Industrial Growth Institute podcast.